Hi, I'm Paul LaFontaine, and today I'm going to talk about heart rate variability and flow. For this quantified self experiment, what I did was use off-the-shelf heart rate variability technology and tried to actually pinpoint that moment of flow, the moment where I was engaged enough that I would lose time. Concept actually that was pioneered by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi in the 1990s, where he put on the y-axis challenge, on the x-axis your skill, and when those two match, you're in what he calls the flow zone, where you lose time. If challenge is too high, then you have anxiety; too low, boredom. In order to create the challenge, I used a dual and back game. Dual and back games create cognitive load by having you remember the location of a square as well as an audio cue of a letter, and you have to remember both of them. My measurement of choice for heart rate variability is RMSSD, and that is a measurement of the sum squared of the differences over the period of time. And a high RMSSD means you're relaxed, low RMSSD means you're not. So an example here is one of stress. I was at the dentist having a tooth drilled. You can see here that the RMSSD is 25.5. That means that I was very stressed and focused on what was happening, as you can imagine. So that's a low RMSSD score for me. Here I'm relaxed and meditating. You see here 71.5 was my RMSSD score. So that shows you the upper end, or the upper bound of what's possible with RMSSD. So I know I'm from 25 to 71. I've done a regression analysis on many of these sessions, and I know that 48 seems to be the break point and the difference between when I'm stressed and when I'm relaxed. So I then took that information, applied it to Csikszentmihalyi's framework, and you see it here. If I'm actually anxious about not being able to do the task, I'd be under 48 RMSSD. As soon as I enter the flow state, I'll be over 48, and then as I move to boredom, drop back under 48. So how did I do it? I played the dual and back game 42 times over 27 days. I played it on my MacBook Air, usually did a couple sessions per day, and I used a heart rate kit that cost about $63 retail. The MacBook Air I actually used to download some freeware, which is the dual and back game. Then I went to my old standby. That's the heart rate measurement belt, which is the Polar H7, which is a very reliable piece of equipment. That then I hooked up or married via Bluetooth with the Sweetwater HRV app. You see here some session information. I actually tried to do 2 a day. Each session lasted about 4.5 minutes. I did 22 at dual 2 back, and I did 21 at dual 3 back, which increased the challenge, so I was able to compare the 2 different levels of challenge. I used a consistent time every day because the RMSSD will actually drop over the course of the day as you tire. So I tried to get it between 8 and 10 in the morning, but always in the earlier part of the day when I had more energy, so I would get a consistent reading across the different sessions. The Sweetwater app actually did a direct measurement of RMSSD over the 4.5 minutes of the session, so I was able to get the RMSSD for that session, which gave me one number that I could compare session to session, which was useful, which I throw it up into a spreadsheet. And you see here, this is the actual spreadsheet that I used to do the analysis. So I had one number per session that I could then begin to visualize the data. So what did I learn? What I learned overall was that the measurement of a new task and the stress of that is actually measurable in the RMSSD, as well as moving into the flow state, and 48 was about the right number. What I also learned is my belief about how I was progressing that moved my RMSSD, not the actual score. So let's take a look. The expected progression from the dual 2 back and dual 3 back would be as I've shown here. I've moved from the left to the right. And in fact, if you look at the scores, it kind of looks like that, very linear. You can see the dual 2 back, which is the light blue, linearly moving up in terms of my scores. The additional challenge of the red in the dual 3 back, but again, a nice linear improvement in my score. So I was learning how to do the game better and better each time. So the score progression actually looked exactly like we'd expect it to, a nice linear movement forward in terms of getting into the flow channel. We also would think that the stress levels would actually reduce over time in a linear fashion as we became better at the game, but that wasn't the case. Here's the actual measurement of the RMSSD for both the dual 2 back and dual 3 back, and you can see it drops as I'm getting a little more bored by the repetition of the 2 back, but it stays flat for 15 sessions, which is interesting because it was basically me trying different strategies and not moving forward relative to my stress. And then the last 6 sessions, it popped up. What was it about the last 6 sessions that caused it to pop up? I tried a new strategy and I saw that it worked. So I actually believed at that point I'd made a breakthrough. So when you graph the actual sessions across the Csikszentmihalyi's framework. You see the blue just marched right along. As we increased the challenge, there was a bundle of sessions that had low RMSSD as I was trying to figure out how to do it. And then pop, right when I thought that I had actually figured it out and I moved quickly upward in terms of RMSSD, it was totally around my belief. So my conclusions are that our happiness and our ability to get into flow is not based on the external environment nor the linear progression of our skill sets. Our ability to get into flow is actually very subjective. It's our belief that we can handle the future. And in fact, that was borne out in the data that was the basis of this study. I think the next thing to study is actually look at boredom itself and see what does the RMSSD scores look like. When I'm bored, I didn't actually collect that data for this one. My name is Paul LaFontaine. You can find my blog at quantselflafont.com, or you can see my Twitter at quantselflafont. Thanks so much.